happy little games. Ever since I saw Hulk Hogan and Rowdy Roddy Piper square off on MTV's The War to Settle the Score at the prepubescent age of 11, I have been hooked on professional wrestling. Ever since I played Pong in the arcades in the 70s, I have been hooked on video games. You take the two and combine them, and you end up with a match made in heaven and a match made in hell. The heaven is all those wonderful wrestling video games I got to play over the years, and the hell is all the turd-rific games I have had to endure. For today's video, we are leaning towards the hellish part with the home video game exclusive WWF In Your House, which was released in 1996. This wrestling game is set in the vein of its predecessor, WWF Wrestlemania, but not quite as polished. Why was this game released by Acclaim and not Midway? Which wrestlers were filmed for this game but didn't actually make the cut? Which wrestler was fired just prior to this game's release? So tune up the band and let's get ready to wrestle, because this is the history of WWF In Your House. My love for wrestling games goes back almost to the beginning with tag team wrestling in the arcades. It wasn't a great game by any means, but it did light a fire in my belly when it came to video games inside the squared circle. The next one, which I consider still the best 8-bit wrestling title, is Boppin' Wrestle for the good old Commodore 64. Graphically, this game doesn't look that great, but the playability is fantastic with a large number of moves, including pile drivers, airplane spins, and top rope splashes, all done with only one fire button. Soon thereafter, I came across the fantastic Matmania, WWF Superstars, and then the big one of my childhood, which has not been surpassed as far as a fun wrestling arcade game, would have to be WWF WrestleFest. Everything from the graphics to the roster to the playability is great, aside from the Legion of Doom and Mean Gene sound-alikes that were used.
It's time to fight with a powerful challenge. We snack on danger, dine on death. To bury every gerbil-faced geek we face. Yeah!
As I mentioned in my WrestleFest video, since this game was developed in Japan, they did not have access to the wrestlers to provide the voices. The same thing happened with Andre and Ted DiBiase in WWF Superstars. After the success of WrestleFest, which to this day is still regarded as one of the best arcade wrestling games of all time, the fighting game genre overtook arcades all over the world. In 1993, Midway introduced Mortal Kombat, which featured digitized characters doing all sorts of depraved acts, such as separating spines from people's bodies. I don't have to tell you how insanely popular Mortal Kombat was during this time, so Midway decided that an over-the-top WWF game utilizing the Mortal Kombat style of gameplay would be the perfect fit. To be honest though, it's not really a wrestling game, but more of a fighting game that has wrestlers in it, but that's okay, because it was still fun to play. Some of the same team that put together Mortal Kombat went to work on WWF Wrestlemania, which meant filming the actual wrestlers doing their trademark moves. This also included the pratfalls dealing with some of the larger-than-life characters, such as The Undertaker not doing any filming until he had a bottle of Jack in his hand. But that's a story for another day and another video, so check out my history of WWF Wrestlemania if you want more behind-the-scenes info and dirt. Due to some sneaky shenanigans by Acclaim, They pulled the license for NBA Jam right out from under Midway's nose, which caused a lot of bad blood between the two companies. Sculptured Software, who had ported WWF Wrestlemania over to a number of home systems, were tasked with creating a brand new sequel featuring a similar style of gameplay to WrestleMania. Sculptured had wanted to take the over-the-top aspect of the game and ramp it up to even more crazy levels. A similar combo system and fast-paced gameplay would still be on offer, but it would feature more bells and whistles than WrestleMania. The roster would be up from 8 to 10 with only Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, and The Undertaker returning. Since this was going to be released as a home exclusive on the CD format, they were able to utilize full motion video packages, which turned out really well. The roster of superstars is drastically different than what we received in WrestleMania. Along with the 3 returning superstars, we did get some cool additions such as Owen Hart, Vader, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Speaking of Triple H, this was his first video game appearance. Unfortunately, we also got Ahmed Johnson to play as, so I guess you have to take the good with the bad. The behind the scenes photos are very interesting due to the color choices that were used. Seeing Bret Hart wearing green as well as The Undertaker sporting red is very odd, but these changes had to be done due to the blue screen technology they were using at the time. WWF In Your House was released in 1996 for the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and MS-DOS. The game got its name because at the time, there was a bi-monthly pay-per-view that the WWF would host entitled In Your House. To promote this first event, the WWF held a sweepstakes giving away a brand new house in Orlando, Florida. The game is a 1-to-4 player wrestling/fighting game in which your goal is to defeat all the other opponents and become either the WWF Intercontinental Champion or the WWF World Heavyweight Champion. The matches are set for 2 out of 3 falls in which you have to pin your opponent in order to advance. The roster includes
The King of Hearts, Owen Hart. Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, The Ultimate Warrior, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Ahmed Johnson, Bret Hart, The Bizarre Goldust, the man they call Vader, Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog.
A neat little addition is the personalized stages each wrestler has. Shawn Michaels wrestles in a nightclub, perhaps the same nightclub where he was beaten up by 17 Marines. Bret Hart at the famous Hart Dungeon. The Undertaker in a crypt. The British Bulldog wrestling in front of Buckingham Palace. Hunter Hearst Helmsley inside of a mansion. The King of Hearts, Owen Hart, in front of a house of cards with his Slammy Award. Ahmed Johnson wrestling in a Turkish bathhouse, etc. Double J Jeff Jarrett had his scenes filmed, but due to a contract dispute was taken out of the game. Sonny was also filmed for the game, but for whatever reason was not included. In the November 1996 issue of GamePro magazine, they mentioned that the ghost of Andre the Giant was going to be a hidden character. The controls are pretty much identical to WrestleMania, with you having a punch, a kick, a super punch, a super kick, a button for blocking, and one for running if you choose to do so. Each wrestler has a standard set of moves including grapples, an Irish whip, hip toss, and more. You can even climb the top rope to perform an impressive aerial attack. You can also reverse certain moves, and you also have the ability to recover at certain points in the match. To give you a little advantage, Each wrestler has their own taunt, which after performing allows you to do even more damage for a short period of time. In addition to these standard moves, each wrestler has 4 personalized attacks as well. For example, Vader has his moonsault, Bret Hart has his sharpshooter, etc. The more attacks you perform and successfully land on your opponent, your combo meter fills up under your life bar. Once it's completely filled, you have access to a super combo. It is possible with the right button combination to achieve up to a 20-hit combo. Littered along the mat are silver WWF icons which, depending on the type, will either increase your speed or increase your health. Be careful though, because the red WWF icons will cause you to lose your health or combo power. Thankfully, you can turn these off in the options. What you can't turn off are the even more nutty aspects of the game, such as the British Bulldog actually morphing into a bulldog, Vader turning into a mastodon, Bret Hart shooting laser beams from his sunglasses, and the Ultimate Warrior will attack you with anabolic needles. Oh wait, I'm thinking of the arcade game Narc. My mistake. One cool aspect from WWF Wrestlemania that was only available in certain revisions of the arcade game was that The Undertaker had a fatality which sees a coffin rise up from the ring and your opponent is stuffed inside. Midway had put this in without the WWF's knowledge, but once Vinnie Mac got wind of it, they were forced to remove it. The fatality only exists in the arcade game and it was not included in the home release of the game due to it being a late edition. All the home conversions were based on an earlier revision of the arcade game. Rumor has it that all the wrestlers were going to have individual fatalities. Sculpture decided to add this feature into WWF In Your House and gave each character a fatality or super pin as they are called in this game. The super pins you can perform are Owen Hart dropping his throne,
I'm the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
Bret Hart's WWF title belt will drop from the ceiling,
The Hitman Hart gets the win!
the British Bulldog wraps his opponent in the Union Jack,
Nobody can match up to the power and the strength of the British Bulldog.
Ahmed Johnson injures his opponent so bad that they break into 35 different pieces,
Ahmed Johnson gets the win!
Triple H makes his opponent disappear into a perfume bottle,
They'll be talking about that match for a long time.
Goldust covers his opponents in actual gold dust and then transforms them into a real Goldust statue.
Perfect!
I'm ready for my close-up.
The Ultimate Warrior performs a Raiden attack and electrifies his opponent until they are shattered into 35 different pieces. The Undertaker transforms his opponent into a gravestone.
Perfect! They'll be talking about that match for a long time.
The man they call Vader does his best Yokozuna impression and kills his opponent with his giant buttocks.
They'll be talking about that match for a long time.
And HBK obliterates his opponent by dropping the set from his interview segment, The Heartbreak Hotel.
Congratulations!
There are some pretty cool super pins here, but some are just downright bizarre, as you can see. As I mentioned earlier in the video, thanks to the CD-ROM format, we get full motion video during the opening, as well as a nice video package of the wrestler you chose when you beat the game. There are quite a few sound bites in the game as well, from the fans to the actual wrestlers themselves. Vince McMahon and Mr. Perfect do commentary, which sounds pretty good. The game was released 27 years ago, and I was such a fan of WWF Wrestlemania that I could not wait for this version to come out. I was such a big fan of the game that I even co-wrote the FAQ along with a friend of mine who goes by the name of Sidra. You might recognize that name because he was one of the first people to translate the Fire Pro games into English. The FAQ is still available on GameFAQs.com if you are curious. With that being said, I must have had my beer goggles on when this game came out, because all these years later the game has not aged very well at all. While the animation at certain points does look pretty good, other times it's extremely choppy and disjointed. Wrestlemania translated well onto the DOS, Saturn, and PlayStation platforms, but this version has a horrible color palette when compared to the first game. Everything has a drab and dreary feel to it, and the colors don't pop off the screen. The resolution of the digitized characters are not quite as clear as they were in Wrestlemania, but that's to be expected because this time it was done by sculptured software and not ported from something Midway had put together themselves. The hit detection is also very inconsistent, and along with the animation, makes for some frustrating gameplay. I do know that Acclaim were having some financial issues at the time, so this game probably didn't get the love and care it deserved. By attempting to copy Midway's Wrestlemania formula and not getting it exactly right, the gameplay misses the mark completely. Out of all the versions I've looked at, from the PlayStation to the Sega Saturn and MS-DOS, my vote would have to go to the MS-DOS version as being the most complete. The load times are much quicker on the MS-DOS version, with another big plus is that the music of the wrestler you are facing will play in the background. Speaking of the console versions, aside from the commentary and grunts and groans from the wrestlers, it can get pretty quiet at times. The PlayStation version also includes a sound test though, which plays all the samples found on the disc. Each wrestler has a number of sampled sounds, so it's cool just to scroll through them and have a listen. Nothing is better than hearing Ahmed Johnson trying to master these things we call words.
Get ready for a beatdown. Bring it on! I'm strictly business. Let's do it! Hey! 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 This is my house. This is the worst mistake you've ever made. Nothing is going to get in my way. You don't want none of me. You don't want none of me. You ready, punk?
I'm going to show you all three versions, and you can decide which one you think is the best.
Hello! That's gotta hurt. No! Wow! Feel this impact!
of the Ultimate Warrior!
As I mentioned, the game has not aged very well and the roster is a bit on the thin side. Whereas WrestleMania only had 8 wrestlers to choose from, they did include some big names such as Razor Ramon and Yokozuna, both of whom could not return because they were no longer with the company. If they would have or could have spent more money fine-tuning the gameplay, then perhaps they could have had another hit similar to WrestleMania. Unfortunately for all of us, it just didn't work out. Well, there you have it, my wrestling friends, the history of WWF in your house. If there are any other wrestling titles you would like me to check out, let me know in the comments down below. Thanks everybody for watching, brother. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. If you would like to contribute but not sign up for my Patreon, you can always click the donate button up above. Thanks everyone for watching.